Good morning, good morning, good morning. I'm at the park. I'm about to take my walk for today, and I keep seeing the pine cones that are falling from the trees, and I felt that if I collected enough of the pine cones, I could make a natural leaf. So after my walk, these are some beautiful pine cones. I felt if I took and collected enough, I could make a natural pine cone wreath. So these are another gift. This is another gift, free gift from Mother Nature that we could actually take use of. So all of these are pine cones that's fallen from the trees. So after my walk, I'm going to take these pine cones, collect enough that I can actually make a natural pine cone wreath free. So let's get started. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is separate my pine cones according to their size. I have a tray here, and I also have another tray here. These are the larger pine cones. I'll use these on the very edge of the beginning. I'm going to place them in the oven for 15 minutes on each side at a temperature of 200 degrees. And after that, we'll start the second process. So this first batch is in the oven, and the reason for me adding the pine cones to the oven is just in case they have any insects that were living inside of the cones while they were outside. It will kill that off, as well as it will dry up the sap that are sometimes on the cones itself. Now that I have the pine cones out of the oven, I'm again trying to separate the pine cones according to their size. And when you pick up your pine cones from wherever the location may be, try to consider large, medium, and small, because this will indicate how the wreath will look. You want your larger pine cones on the outer edge of the wire frame, then you want your medium, and then your small. So my next step is to place the pine cones in a water and bleach solution. This will clean the pine cones, as well as when the pine cones become wet, they will close up. And I need the pine cones to be closed in order for me to actually place them in the frame of the wreath. So I'm just going to continue to separate the pine cones according to medium, large, and small, and then place them in a bleach solution. Now, I suggest using a 50-50 that will clean the pine cones and any of the extra sap that may also dissipate. So I'm going to do that now. So I have the pine cones in a bleach and water solution, and as you can see, some of the pine cones are actually starting to close up. You need the pine cones to be saturated and submerged in water, and this will clean the pine cones, as well as they will close up. And once they're closed, then they will fit on the frame. Now, I've actually mixed a combination of the large and the medium together, and I separated the small, which will be the last frame of the wreath that I'm going to do. So I'm just going to eyeball and look at which ones are smaller. I'm going to eyeball and look at which ones are larger and which ones are medium. But I'm going to let this sit in the bleach and water solution to make sure all of the cones are clean. And then I'll come back and set up the frame as to how I want to create my door wreath. Okay, so this is the wreath form that I'm going to use. I'm going to have the larger pine cones inserted in this section, the medium size in this section, and then the very small pine cones will go in the bottom section. Now I actually have a form here and a towel, because remember the pine cones are wet and you need to have them on a surface where they can actually dry for a period of time. The pine cones have to be closed in order for them to fit inside each section. And I'm going to eyeball, I think maybe 4, maybe 5 can fit in each area as I go along. I suggest, if you're not comfortable handling the pine cones, to place some gloves on, because they do have a little sap that's coming out of the pine cones. So this is how I'm going to go all the way around the perimeter now that the pine cones are closed. And you want to insert your pine cones so they have enough room to open up. And this is a combination of both the medium and large pine cones. And you just go in. You want to leave a little room, because when they open up, they will spread. So I'm going to do 5 in this section. And I think I'm going to scoot this one down, add the larger one. I hope you can see this. This is a larger pine cone. And I'm going to stick that down in there and find another larger one. So every other one could be larger. And just push them down inside. The pine cones open up. So I have 3 here. And I believe that's going to be enough room to secure each pine cone. Just place them down inside. I have a towel here to catch the wetness of the water from the pine cones, because I'm taking them directly out of the water and placing them down inside of the wreath form. So let's see if I can get a larger one to go in the center of this group. Say right here. And then I'll go on to the next section. Place it down inside. And I'll come back when I start the medium and the small. Okay, so I'm going into the second frame, and be sure that you have your cones so when they open up, they'll catch the frame. And you may have to lift it a little bit. I will tell you that they are sticky. They are sticky, so you want to definitely, if you're a little queasy about gluey substance, you might want to wear gloves, but I'm okay with that. And just go all the way around. Now these are my large and medium cones. I have the smaller cones which will go on this section, and I did try 6 in each section of the wreath. Let's see, 1, 2, 3. Now this section I might only go 4 because it is getting smaller, and you have to remember the cones are going to definitely open back up. I did 4 there. I'm going to do 4 here. And make sure you have a towel or something that can catch the water from the wreath as you go along. And I may need just more small instead of more large pine cones. But just go around each section and push them down inside. While the cones are closed, you won't need any glue or wiring to hold the cones in the form. And this is why I like this method. Just to continue to go all the way around the form. And you can eyeball it as they start to open up. You can see where you may need to place an extra pine cone. And so far it's looking really, really nice. And just remember, this was, of course, I picked up the wreath form at a minimal cost, and everything else was free. The pine cones fall naturally, whether you're taking a nature walk or if you have a tree in your backyard. Mother Nature gives this to you at no additional cost. So these are all of my medium pine cones that I'm using in this section. I will go back and double check to see where I can add another if necessary. And then I'll move on to the smaller pine cones. So keep in mind when you're looking for your pine cones at the park or wherever, you want to have an idea of how you want your frame to look. Okay, I'm just sticking these inside. Some of the cones are opening up, and that's perfectly fine. I need a little small one right here. I'll just press it down in there. Okay, now I'm gonna go on to the last frame, and that's going to be all of my small pine cones. Okay. So they've been saturated, and they're the smaller of all of the pine cones. Let's start over on this side. I'm gonna go here, here, and just go all the way around. And as the form gets fuller, you can see where you may need to add another pine cone. You could add a bow at the top. You can add some nuts. You can dress it up any way you like. Okay. So you can see how nicely this is opening up. Yeah. Now I have a towel, and I have a form underneath of the towel just to catch some of the moisture from the pine cones. I want to make sure I get all of my pine cones in while they're wet, so the form will be able to hold them. So there you have it. My wreath that absolutely is gorgeous. I'll allow it to dry. The pine cones are open back up. And this is a wreath that will last year after year, that can hang on your door. You could actually add lavender spray to it to give it a nice fragrance, but I am enjoying the scent of the pine cones. Okay, so after 3 days of allowing the cones to dry, they've opened back up, and I am completely satisfied with the look, how the cones came out. The wreath came out. It looks absolutely gorgeous, and just think, it didn't cost me but a minimum amount of money. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Thank you for watching my video. Please like, share, and subscribe, and as always, happy gardening.